In this brief tutorial, I'm going to talk about the 5 different types of keyframes. Understanding keyframes and how they work and how you can modify them is critical to creating really professional looking motion graphics. Every keyframe has 2 aspects. It has the temporal and the spatial. And we're going to take a look at what those mean. We're going to start out by creating a comp that demonstrates how we modify the temporal aspect of the keyframe. So let's create a new composition. Command N, and I'm going to name this one Temporal. I'm using HD TV 1080 2997. So that gives us a 16:9 aspect ratio, 1920 by 1080. I'm using black background, and I've got a duration of 3 seconds. I'm going to say OK. Now let's take the shape tool, the rectangle shape tool, right up here. First thing I want to do is show the title action safe, so you can press the apostrophe key, and I'm going to click in the middle, hold down the command key. That lets me drag out from the point where I clicked, hold the shift key to constrain the proportion to a perfect square. Down in the timeline, I'm going to open up the rectangle and open up rectangle path and change the size to, let's go 90. And because it's linked, it's going to be 90 by 90 since we made a perfect square. Let's close up the rectangle, let's close up the rectangle path and open up the fill, change the color, some color you like. And I'm just going to go with the red for right now, say OK. Now we're going to change the position of this. We're going to move it up to the upper left corner to action safe. So with the move tool, key command V, select your shape layer and drag it up to the top corner. Now we're going to start our keyframes at 10 frames. So press Command Shift, right arrow, and then hit P to reveal the position properties and make a keyframe by clicking on the stopwatch, and this will be what's called a linear keyframe. Now we're going to go forward 60 frames, so you can do Command Shift and then right arrow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then let's move this across the composition window, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key to constrain it so it stays in a straight line. I'm going to go all the way to action safe on the other side, and that automatically creates a second linear keyframe. So what do I mean by linear keyframe? Well, first of all, look at the keyframe. It's a diamond shape. So diamond-shaped keyframes are called linear keyframes. Linear keyframes have a consistent speed. So you can see up here in the composition window, we have a lot of little dots. So that's the motion path. And all these dots are spaced equally. That means the speed is consistent throughout the animation. If I press play, you can see it's all the same speed all the way across. So this is linear. So let's change the name of this layer to linear. Okay, and then the next one we want to do is called Easy Ease In. So let's duplicate this layer by pressing Command D, and let's go to Home, which is the beginning of the composition, the beginning of the timeline. Now linear 2, I'm going to drag down below linear, and I'm going to change the name of it to Ease In, and then we're going to move it down. So let's hit P for position. This is a very useful little trick here. You need to be on a keyframe for this to work. So I'm going to hit this arrow here on the far left, and that'll move to a keyframe. Click on the word position, that selects all the keyframes, and then hold down the Option key and drag, and that will move the Y for both of the keyframes. So we're moving Y for everything. Then you can open up the contents and open up the rectangle and go to the fill and change the color of the fill. So just change that to some color you like, say OK. And then we can close the content up. Now on the keyframes, I want you to go to the second keyframe so we can use this arrow on the far left to get over to that other keyframe. Select the keyframe and then right click on the keyframe and go to Keyframe Assist Easy Ease In. And then the look of the keyframe changes. This is representing greater than to less than. So it's going to go from bigger to smaller. So in terms of speed, that means it goes from fast to slow. And you can see it in here with the dots. They're farther apart at the beginning, and then they get much closer together. The closer those dots are together, the slower the animation is going to go. So let's go back to the beginning, press play. So both of these shapes are arriving at the same time, but the way they get there is different. So the first one is a consistent speed. The second one starts out fast and then goes slow. They end up at the same place at the same time. Okay, now let's duplicate the ease in, Command D, and then we'll move that duplicate down below. We're going to exaggerate the easy ease in, so I'm going to name this one, I'll name it heavy ease in. And then let's move it down. I'll select it, press P, click the word, make sure you're on a keyframe, click the word position, and then hold down the Option key and drag on the Y property to bring that down. And then let's close up the disclosure triangle, open it again so we can see contents. We need to get into the fill again. So go down to fill and then just change this color to something else. And then we can close up content again. And this time I am going to use something called the graph editor to exaggerate the speed of these keyframes. So to do this, I'm going to select both keyframes. Here's where we access the graph editor, right here. And if you click on that button, I want to make sure we're looking at the same thing. So down at the bottom, here you see an eyeball and then you see a little symbol. Let's go into that square symbol and make sure you're on speed graph. And when you're on speed graph, I want you to select the second keyframe and you're going to get some direction handles, just like you would with a path in Illustrator or Photoshop. And then I want to drag this out as far as it'll go. And now let's play the animation and see what it looks like. So now it starts out very fast and then goes slow. Okay, now we're going to do the opposite way. Let's take the linear, we'll start off with the linear, duplicate the linear, drag it below heavy ease, and this is going to be named ease out. Ease out. We need to move its position. I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to click on the graph editor symbol here so I go back into my regular keyframes. I want to select this layer. If you hit U, you will reveal your keyframes. And I want to be on a keyframe, so I'm going to move to the first keyframe here, click the word position, hold down the Option key and drag on the Y value to drag this one down below. And then let's go into, so close that up, open it up again so we can get into content, go into the rectangle, change the color, and I'll go maybe something kind of gold. Okay, close that up. I'm going to select the first keyframe and then right click and go down to Keyframe Assist, Easy Ease Out. And you're going to see now we have the opposite of what we had before. That means it's going to increase as it moves. It's going to go from slow to fast. So it's going to be slow over here the first 10 frames, and then it's going to start going, it's going to start picking up speed. So let's see what that looks like. Okay, now let's duplicate this layer. And take the duplicate, move it down below. Let's rename it. This will be heavy ease out. And select it. Press P to get position. Make sure you're on a keyframe. Click on the word position. to select all the keyframes, hold the Option key, and drag on the Y value to the right, and we're going to move it down. Close up the layer, reopen it so you can get the contents, open up the rectangle, open up Fill, change the color. Say OK. Hit U to reveal the keyframes. I'm going to select both keyframes, go into my graph editor, and then I'm going to select the first keyframe and then drag it over as far as I can. And let's see what happens. So it starts out very slow and then goes very fast. Okay, now I'm going to close up the graph editor, and let's duplicate this layer, Command D, and I'll drag the duplicate below and hit P for position, make sure I'm on a keyframe, click the word position, hold the Option key, and drag on the Y property and move this one down, something like that. And then I'm going to close it up and open it again so that I can get into the fill. And I'll change the fill color, reddish blue, like that. Close up the content. At 10 frames, let's hit U so we can see our keyframes. Now the first one I have got already. This is the ease out. So we're going to rename this one because we're going to do an ease out on one side and ease in on the other. Let's call it Easy E. So I'm going to call this Easy E. And then I'm going to move to the second keyframe, and using the Keyframe Assist, I'm going to make this one Easy Ease In. So let's play it and see what it looks like. And if we look at the motion path, you can see the farther apart means it's going faster. Closer together means it's going slower. Let's open it up. This side already had the exaggerated slow, and I'm going to drag this other one as far as I can the other way, and we get something that looks like this. And back into the regular timeline. Let's play it. So that really jumps. Okay, now there's one more type of keyframe, and that's the hold keyframe. So we're going to duplicate the linear. So we're going to start out with 2 linear keyframes. So I'll just Command D, drag linear 2 all the way down to the bottom. Let's rename this one hold. And hit P for position. Make sure you're on a keyframe. Make sure I've got them both selected. Then drag it down. And you can go into the fill, change the color. Okay, so then on the first keyframe, hit U to reveal the keyframes. Make sure you're on the keyframe. You'll know you're on a keyframe if this diamond is solid, if it's lit up. Then you know that you're actually on the keyframe. Now I am going to select the keyframe, right click, and I'm going to go to toggle hold. And then I'll go to the last keyframe, select it, right click, and again, toggle hold. Let's see what happens when we play it. Okay, so it holds in position and then it just jumps. Okay, so these are, what we've been modifying are the temporal aspects of the keyframe. The temporal refers to the speed. The spatial aspect of the keyframe is going to relate to where the position of the object is in the composition window. So let's take a look at that next.